to the Sports Note for Wednesday, April 9th, and we're just 48 hours removed from arguably the greatest Final Four of my lifetime. I'm going to be 47 years old next month, ladies and gents, and I have no shame in admitting this was probably one of the most, if not the most, entertaining Final Four of my lifetime. And again, I've been watching college basketball, especially March Madness, for a lot of years. Um, we actually had drama in all three games once we got down to the Final Four. We saw Florida against Auburn in a back and forth game, and then Florida, grabs the lead late in a game that they that they trailed for a good chunk of it. We saw Duke go completely ice cold, and Houston take advantage, stealing a win there, and then on Monday night we saw a game that, as a Florida fan, I have no question in saying I was fanning scared for a lot of that game when when Houston went up by 5 on that alley oop um with about, I want to say, 8.5 9 minutes left in the first half. I actually shut the TV feed off and went to like watching the live scoring online, and then tuned back in with about 3 minutes left to go. Now, granted, it was a very long day, and I was so nervous that I actually passed out for a good chunk of the second half, and actually ended up watching most of the second half, on replay. And quite honestly, I'm kind of glad I did. If I would have seen Florida fall down 12 at that point, there's no way I actually would have turned that game back on. But that's more of a credit to Todd Golden and the defensive scheme that he drew up at halftime, even though it was only a 3-point game. But it's also a very big feather in the cap, and there's a lot of credit that has to go out. And I'm going to throw a lot of flowers today at the national runner-up, more specifically the head coach, and that's the Houston Cougars, and again, more specifically, the legendary Kelvin Sampson. Now, Sampson is 69 years old. He's just shy of hitting um, a, a, a massive mark of 800 wins, which there's only about, I want to say, 25 other coaches, or I want to say there's maybe about 30 other coaches that have actually hit this mark. And when you look at the coaches that are currently active in men's college basketball, him and Tennessee's Rick Barnes are the only ones who have actually hit that mark or surpassed it. Now, Rick Barnes is going to be 71 by the time next season rolls around. But the other aspect is that for Sampson, this was his first ever trip to the Final Four, let alone the national championship game for the school of Houston. It was their third championship. It was the first time they've been there since 1984, which was the second consecutive year. It doesn't it, anyone who follows college basketball, even if you're not as old as I am, remembers that their first two trips were the legendary five slamma jamma with Clyde Drexler, Akeem Olajuwon. They come up short against Michael Jordan in 1983. They come up against Jim Valvano's Cinderella NC State Wolfpack in 1984, and actually made the Final Four just a few years ago, losing in the national semifinal. But again, first time they've actually been the national runner-up since then. And let's also be honest, um, they were 7 seconds away from potentially winning a championship, and you could even make a case that it would have been even longer than that. The Cougars committed turnovers on their final four possessions and didn't even get a shot off, as we all saw, with 7 seconds remaining, where where it would have been a carry or a travel, and the ball would have gone over to Florida anyway, and they completely clear out. And Alex Condon of Florida jumps on the ball and basically runs out the clock, knowing that Houston's got to actually fight to be able to get, not only gain possession back, but get a shot off. And Sampson even addressed that in the post game press conference, where he says that's unfortunately that's inexcusable. We got to get a shot off. We got to get a shot off. You can't do something like that. We got to get a shot off. Um, and he's absolutely right. As as great as they played against Duke, especially down the stretch, you had to figure that they were too large, they were too athletic, they were too physical, and they could have done whatever they wanted, but yet they could not put Florida away because neither team was shooting very well from deep, really at all, uh, through much of that game. Um, but you have to again, you have to give credit to Kelvin Sampson for the job that he did. This is the fourth time in the last 6 or 7 years, or fifth time in the last 7 years that Houston's hit the 30 win plateau. Um, and it's also you have to go back to the only two times that they didn't hit that mark um, was the COVID shortened season of 2020, where they actually finished at 23-8 before everything got canceled. And then you also have to go back. I want to say the year before that, where they I'm sorry, the year after that, where they ended up with 28 wins. Um, and since the midway point of that shortened 2020 regular season, Houston has not been out of the top 25. And you can bring in all the players that you want, but if you don't have the right guy, coaching your team inside and out, putting together fantastic practices and game plans, it doesn't make a lick of difference. We've seen great coaches who actually struggle and never really get over the hump, and then they may take a job elsewhere and never really get back to the level of excitement or thunder that they had previously. As one of my lights has gone out here. Um, there we go. Um, but since the start of the 2021 season, Houston has actually not been out of the top 10 up until earlier this year, where they fell to 15th. So there was a stretch of two consecutive years that they were in the top 10. And I want to say last year, Houston was in the top five all season, including a number of weeks at number one, before unfortunately losing in the Elite Eight last year to Bruce Pearl and Auburn. Um, uh, but for Sampson to kind of rebound here in this part of his career, because let's also you can't talk about Kelvin Sampson without remembering the show cause uh, penalty and order that he received that actually forced him to be let go at Indiana over a decade ago here, coming up on 15 years at this point, I want to say, or it might even be older than that. Um, for illegal recruiting violations, which namely centered around Eric Gordon, who's now in his 18th season in the NBA. But let's also, if you're going to talk about that, you also have to sit back and think of the four coaches in this year's Final Four. Three of them had controversies linked to them, and one of them actually is still quote unquote ongoing. So you had Bruce Pearl with violations at Tennessee, and he gets a show cause penalty. Kelvin Sam he gets let go as well, and then picks up at Auburn. Sampson has a show cause penalty, as we just discussed here, with Indiana. Gets let go. Spends a couple of years as an assistant in the NBA. Comes back, takes over the. He's at Oklahoma for a little bit, and then he comes to, um, and then he goes to Houston, who was in the American Athletic and now absorbed back into the Big 12. Sampson also became the first coach in history to the uh, win the Coach of the Year award in the old Big Eight, and then leave the conference. And then the conference expanded to the Big 12 as it's known now, even though now there's 16 teams, and then came back to the conference and won Coach of the Year again, like he did last year. Um, he's won multiple Coach of the Year awards. He was the 1995 and 2024 AP Coach of the Year. He's the back-to-back Big 12 Coach of the Year. He was a four-time American Athletic Coach of the Year while still at Houston before they migrated in. He was the Big Eight Coach of the Year in '95 with Oklahoma, and oh yeah, was a Pac-10 Coach of the Year back in 1991 when he was coaching Washington State. Um, but so we, and then you've also got uh, the inappropriate conduct allegation that we remember earlier in the year with Todd Golden, where he actually stepped away for a little while. John Shire at Duke is the only one who didn't have anything attached to him, but you also have to remember that Pearl and Sampson have been doing this for the better part of 30 years, and they've been at their current schools well over a decade. Shire and Golden both came in uh, to their respective programs in 2022. They've both been to Final Fours, and now Golden's got himself a national championship in his first trip there. Um, so it's a very good redeeming story for Sampson, and I would like to actually see Houston get back there. There was a big part of me. If you guys follow me or if you've watched the Wise Guys, you all know firsthand that there was a very big part of me that did that. As much as I wanted to see Duke against Florida as two of the probably three major teams I follow in college basketball, with Mizzou being another. I also follow UCLA. I follow Cleveland State, having attended there for a number of years. I follow Xavier to a distance. I'm a Marquette fan. So there's about anywhere between 8 and 10 college basketball programs that I follow out of the 360 that there are. So that would have been a very, very difficult final for me to watch. So as great as Florida's win is, uh, I'm actually glad that it happened. But you have to tip your cap, and you have to feel absolutely crestfallen and terrible for the way that it ended for the Cougars. Would I have liked to have seen Houston win at the expense of my Gators? Probably not, but I definitely would have respected it, and it would have been very, very cool for Sampson to get that one. As much as I can't stand Tennessee, I would like to see Rick Barnes maybe get one. Tennessee had their deepest run in a lot of years, getting to the Elite Eight before Houston kind of ran them off the floor in the second half. Barnes's window is closing very, very soon. Kelvin Sampson's window is closing very, very soon. We're only going to have these guys, amongst the upper echelon of college basketball coaches for a very, very short amount of time, because now you're going to have to give way to some of the newer guns. You're going to see guys like Mick Cronin start taking steps back. Bill Self has not got very much left. John Calipari's not got very much left. Rick Pitino's now on his fifth or sixth different program, and he's definitely up there. He's not going to have very much time left um, here with this. We definitely know that Tom Izzo is probably right up there at the top of most respected and legendary, and deserves all of his flowers. But Michigan State hasn't been to a Final Four in quite a few years, and won a title in even longer. Um, but again, he's got his title. Barnes and Sampson don't. So it would have been very cool to be able to see one of them break through. Um, I think with the way that they recruit, you're going to see a lot. You're going to see, you could see Kansas kind of return to form in the Big 12 next year. I think Sampson's going to have Houston ready to go, because even though they could be losing, a couple of guys to the draft and the transfer portal, but but the fact that they were 7 seconds away from a national championship, how much are they going to be able to pull in to make another run at this and make a fifth straight year of 30 plus wins? So let me know what you guys think. Do you think Sampson would finally get that elusive national championship? Do you think Rick Barnes could be in the conversation? Who do you actually have as your front runner now for next year? Because early preseason predictions from CBS and ESPN are predicting, even though yes, Florida didn't win the national championship, for the guys that they're going to be losing, they're going to be down in the high teens, upper 20s for next year's preseason poll. There's a lot of people that are thinking Houston's going to start next year already in the top five, including some people even thinking that they could be number one. But I will be back with you guys very, very soon. Wise guys, we will be with you guys on Sunday night, and watch our last show for some scheduling changes. that we're making this month. And again, I will see you guys very, very soon. Take care.